Hello everyone, this is Shannon from Not So Po, and today I'm doing a review of the Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. Tasha Suri is an amazing author whose previous works I've absolutely loved. She wrote the books of Ambha duology, which includes The Empire of Sand and Realm of Ash. I do have a series review for those, so I will link them below, but they are some absolute favorites of mine. So I was incredibly excited about this new release, The Jasmine Throne, which is the first book in a new Indian-inspired epic fantasy trilogy. It did not disappoint. I absolutely loved this book, and I want to tell you all about why it was so good. So first, let me tell you what the story is about. Because this is an epic fantasy, there are actually quite a few different threads going on in the story. But two of the main characters that we follow are Malini, who is a princess and the sister of the new emperor, who is kind of a religious extremist and has exiled her to a decrepit old temple in a conquered land because she wouldn't fall in line with some of his religious practices. We also follow Priya, who is a woman that is a maidservant, and she actually grew up in the temple itself before it was destroyed and practiced that religion, although that is a secret. This is a religion that really worships a lot of sort of earth elementals and is very connected to plants and things like that. At the same time, we're dealing with bigger scale issues, things like a lot of unrest in the empire as people are unhappy with the new emperor and trying to overthrow him, and different conquered lands, such as the one that Priya is from, wanting their independence, all while dealing with something called the rot, which is a sickness that is spreading. So there's many different threads in this story, but Priya and Malini are our main characters that we're following. Content warnings are in the description box below. This story does have quite a few dark things in it, so do be aware of that. So now let me talk about what aspects of this book just made me fall in love with it, starting with the world building. I love good world building, and I think that Tasha Suri does an amazing job in this book. This world feels incredibly fleshed out to me. We have all of these different cultures and groups and religions. Each of the countries that is part of this empire have very different customs, very different holidays, very different ways of interacting with the world, and very different religions. And we see aspects of that. We also see all of these different stratifications of society. So we get perspectives from people who are royals, from people who are military people, from rebels, from just peasants, all sorts of different perspectives. One of the things that I really liked about this is that we do get so many different points of view. That's the kind of world building that I love in epic fantasy. Although this does mean that Priya and Malini, while probably the main characters, are not all of the perspectives that we hear from. We hear from tons of other ones, which for me helps me kind of see different facets of this world, but may not work for everybody. I just loved the richness and the fullness and the way that we understood so many different beliefs and practices and religions and everything like that. I loved the world building. I also really loved the magic systems in this. And just as there are many different cultures and many different religions, there's actually multiple different types of magic system in this. So each of the religions kind of has their own magic system. And what we're seeing in this book is that they're actually all kind of valid. But one of the main magic systems that we see is that of Priya's religion, which is related to kind of the earth elementals and is based on the Indian idea of Yaksa or Yaksha, and it is just such fascinating magic, all of this connection to water and to plants, and it's really cool. The rot, which is that disease that is infecting people, is also just such a fascinating disease. It is this thing that is really plants sort of taking over people's bodies. It's rather creepy, but very interesting. Another aspect of this book that I loved was the discussion of politics and of imperialism and of approaches to dealing with different political issues. So throughout this book, we have all of these different perspectives, and many of them have different kind of political goals, or even if they have the same political goals, they have very different opinions on how those should be reached. We're dealing with a lot of issues of imperialism because we've got an empire where some of the vassal states are very much loyal to it, but others, such as Priya's, very much do not want to be a part of the empire. And so there's all of these questions of rebellion and of, people who want to overthrow the emperor because he's not a good guy. And each person and each group, each faction has its own method, its own idea of the correct way to approach that. Some are very violent and upfront about it. Some are much more manipulative and behind the scenes, and some are very pacifist and just trying to protect the people they love. And I loved that complexity of looking at the situation and all of these different people who are fighting for what they think is right and in very, very different ways. Another aspect of the story that has great complexity is the characters. These characters are very morally gray, and really not morally gray in that they're bad people, but morally gray in that a lot of them have to make very tough decisions. Many of them have torn loyalties. They have different thoughts about the best way to achieve the goals that they want. Many of them make decisions that are really quite rough or have very negative consequences. Sometimes they hurt people that they love. Sometimes they have to betray them. So many different really discussions of the decisions that characters have to make. And some of the characters also are not great people. Some of them are, very much bloodthirsty or are power hungry or are religiously fervent. And so it's just fascinating to see all of these different characters and their moral compasses as they navigate the complexities of this world. And lastly, I think my favorite aspect of this book is the complicated relationships. So at the heart of this story is really love and loyalty. So much of what is going on is all about people having love for their country, love for freedom, but also love for each other. There's a lot of very complicated sibling relationships in this, very complicated friendships, very complicated relationships where each person is trying to navigate the connection that they feel for another person, while also the differences in their beliefs or the differences in their approaches. There's also quite a bit of a history of trauma in many of these relationships and how that's navigated, and navigated differently by different people. It's just so complicated in the way that each person is interacting with the others around them. And I just loved that complexity and that discussion of all of the choices and all of the ways that they interact. Also, it's kind of beautiful. There is a very slow burn kind of sapphic romance between Priya and Malini, but they're also very much torn by their political allegiances. And so how they navigate that connection to each other while also dealing with their political ideals is really, really very, very well done. Overall, the Jasmine Throne is exactly what I'm looking for in epic fantasy. It has amazing world building and just such fascinating characters, so many complex relationships and interactions and choices. I loved the magic. I loved the characters so much. It is really, truly very much my style. I think that if you like slower fantasy that has a lot of this complicated, complex world building and relationships, and you like character-focused work, I think that this book could work for you as well. If you guys have read this or read other books by Tasha Suri or other epic fantasy that you want to recommend to me, anything at all, just leave me a comment down below.